Hello friends, in this video I am going to discuss the short story A Hunger Artist by Franz Kafka, and in this video I am going to discuss introduction to writer, his writing style, summary, character analysis, plot analysis, themes and symbols in the short story, and we'll analyze the short story. So let's begin the video. This is the text of the short story, and we'll begin by introduction to writer and his writing style. Franz Kafka was born on 3rd July 1883, and he was a German-speaking Bohemian Jewish novelist and short story writer, and he was widely regarded as one of the major figures of 20th century literature, and his works, which fuses the elements of realism and fantasy. Realism, you know, that realistic portrayal of something, and he combined those realistic things, realism with fantasy, utopia, idealistic. Okay, typically features isolated protagonists were there in his short stories, who are facing bizarre or surrealistic predicaments and incomprehensible bureaucratic powers, and he has been interpreted as exploring the themes of alienation is there, existentialism is there, anxiety, guilt, and absurdity. And his best known work include Die Wanderung, okay, and Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is very renowned work of his, and there is a term used which is dedicated to him, that is called Kafkask, which means which include all the writers which are influenced by Kafka. And Kafka has entered the English language to describe situations like those found it in his writing. And term used for all those writers, I already told you, who are influenced by Kafka. And his writing is utter solitude descendant into called abysses of oneness, and his stories are strikingly strange, symbolizing the weirdness and signifying absurdity of life. We'll see in this short story the main story, which is about a hunger artist, and he delves deep into psychology layers of characters and characterizes the bizarre side of one's imagination and thinking. And he has got an autobiographical approach which represents his own life in stories. Realism is there, we'll see, and existentialism is also there. What is existentialism? It's a philosophy which emphasizes the existence of the individual as a free and responsible agent. Now the summary of the short story. It's about hunger artist who professionally fast in cage, who has come on hard times. People think he cheats by sneaking food. His manager limits his fasting to 40 days, even though the hunger artist believes he can last longer, and he remains unsatisfied even when public leaves his performance happily. And without notice, the audience deserts the hunger artist. A European tour fails to drum up interest, and hunger artist hires himself out to a circus. However, people only watch him because he is near the animals. So they treated him like an animal. Dehumanization is there, we'll see, and not because they are interested in him. He remains neglected, and until one day an overseer asks him if he's still fasting. The hunger artist asks for forgiveness and explains that people should not admire his fasting. He simply could never find any food he liked. That's why he is fasting. But if he had, he would have eaten it. With it he dies. These are the last words of his, and the circus replaces him in a cage with a panther. And now the audience enjoy the show of the panther, and they forget about the hunger artist. Basically, they are not able to understand the art of that artist. Everyone is fascinated by the vitality of the panther and never want to move away. Now we'll see the character analysis. The first one is the hunger artist, who is the protagonist of the short story. Hunger artist, he fasts publicly in a cage for a longer periods of time, and he revels in his willful self-denial and limitless suffering. So we can say that his art become a cause of his suffering, but publicly inability to understand his art frustrate him, and he need to feel superior to audience, and yet he is dependent on them for attention, and he's a symbol. Okay, we'll see symbolism in. So he's a symbol of, among other things, the misunderstood artist whose work has been compromised by negative forces of capitalism. The hunger artist admits that fasting is easy for him, and that if he found some food he liked, he would gladly eat it. These are the last words that he said. If we take fasting to be a metaphor for suffering, he seems to be saying that suffering is a natural response to alienation, not a willful choice, and therefore should not be admired. And this claim render his art a dubious enterprise. We cannot help but have sympathy for hunger artist as he tries to connect with a fickle, unappreciative public. In final words indicate that above all he has unsuccessfully sought to give and receive love through his body, not merely suffer. And audience can be treated as a character as a whole, you can say, and people are fascinated by watching the hunger artist fast, and they have an odd attraction to spectacles of horror, suffering, and evidenced by their delight when one of the escort cries. Hunger artist has a dual relationship with his audience, or their spectators, you can say. While he needs to feel superior to them in terms of self-control, and also requires their attention as well. So you can say, however, the audience did not understand the hunger artist craft. The watchers, usually the butchers, which is a symbol of gluttony and perhaps non-kosher practices, assigned to ensure that he truly fasts, assumes that he cheats. Ultimately, the audience is a fickle lot. They chooses cheap satisfaction from entertainment over difficult digestion of art. And the desert hunger artist without notice one that entranced instead by his opposite, the vital appetitive panther. And impresario, another important character. Impresario was the manager of that circus, who was the overseer the hunger artist performance. Before the hunger artist hires himself out to the circus, the hunger artist was formally able to perform independently without management. When professional fasting was in greater favor, the impresario and then seems like a symbol of corruptive forces of capitalism as well. And he restricts the hunger artist's free will and creativity, limiting his fast to 40 days, and humiliating the hunger artist in public by shaking him, lying him his lack of endurance as well. And the panther is another character. The panther replaces the hunger artist in his cage after he dies, and the panther is a symbol of vitality, freedom, appetite. And the panther hypnotized the audience, fascinate them as a new spectacle of horror and suffering, except one that inflicts suffering, not absorb it. And escorts were there. The young ladies escort the hunger artist out of his cage at the end of his fast, and they appear kind but are cruel and repulsed by the hunger artist. One cries when she touches him. And overseer, another character, the overseer of the circus, talks to dying hunger artist at the end of the story, and here's the final word of the hunger artist, that in which he said that if I found the food that I like, probably I eat them. So the themes in the short story, the first theme is suffering as an art. Okay, hunger artist art is a suffering, and at a metaphorical level it's a suffering, and the pleasures and artistry of fasting comes from free will he exercised in his self-denial and masochism. And through he is confined to a cage, he has a complete control over his pain and hunger, and pushing himself past human limits in his constant search for a new masterpiece of starvation. Kafka romanticizes the hunger artist as an alienated, starving artist who flouts capitalist society and concentrates solely on his own art from his virtual one-room apartment, which is his cage. And we'll see the how cage is used as a symbol. Okay, however the hunger artist questions the importance of his strange art at two different points. He admits that fasting is easy, although no one believes him, and with his dying words he says he should not admire for fasting, he simply never found any food he liked. And we'll see that this claims undermines the free will he seemingly exercised in his fasting. Not eating is merely an alienated reflex, not a deliberately chosen endeavor. And another problem crops up with his art is that he do not get the attention of his audience, and most artists have temperament of suffering, and artists often express themselves through art of relieve this suffering and share it with other, and this sharing can be seen as a noble gesture. And there is also something selfish and bitter about it. Artists want the audience to suffer as much as they do. Hunger artist fails to enlarge the audience about his suffering, as it is interested in his suffering only as an entertainment. And we'll see his failure to make people understand him only makes him suffer more, creating a vicious cycle of suffering. Ultimately, a divide springs up in his art. Hunger artist remains aristocratically unsatisfied, while the audience lives entertainingly satisfied. And another theme will see the artist's dependence on the audience. The artist has a complicated relationship with his audience. Like most artists, he needs a constant validation, and he believes fasting and suffering is a high art, not mere entertainment. As such, he needs to prove that he is not cheating. However, no one believes that he is truly fasting all the time, and the misunderstanding of his art produces more suffering for the hunger artist. So he enter a vicious cycle. The more he suffer, the less his audience understands him. So he suffer more and more with time. And hunger artists also need to feel superior to the audience because he got an art of fasting, and he elevates his fasting to a mythical proportion, trying to break world records, and even when no one else pay attention. And we'll see that this blend of dependency, need for validation, and need to feel superior may explain why the hunger artist remain eternally unsatisfied, and he want to be understood and have his art validated, but he also want to be understood so he can feel superior and remain impervious from criticism. And we'll see the audience's fascination with suffering comes out to be another theme. The audience did not appreciate the hunger artist fasting as a serious art, but is interested in it only as an entertainment. At the circus, the hunger artist is freak show with less credibility than the animals. So they are basically dehumanizing them, treated him like animal, and later when he was replaced by Panther, they were fascinated by the Panther more. And spectacles of suffering rivets the audience much as people are still fascinated by highway car crush. Okay, we'll see the audience is interested in suffering only when it happens to other. It never reflects on its own potential for suffering when it sees suffering in other, especially the hunger artist. And because of this denial, the audience does not want to believe the hunger artist is suffering as much as he claims, and they set up watchers who believes the hunger artist cheats, a convenient way to negate the potency of his suffering and prevent it from reaching them. And we'll see the crowd settles on a new spectacle. The panther is a symbol of appetite and suffering. We'll see in symbolism as well. And Kafka tells us at the end of the story that the audience never want to move away from its fascination with the panther. The audience capricious history of consuming entertainment puts that claim in doubt. And another theme is separation of artists from the society, alienation, you can say. And the hunger artist trouble relationship with his audience or spectators. It suggests that the artist exists apart from the society and must therefore be misunderstood. In the hunger artist case, being an artist means cutting oneself off from the world, a conclusion reflected in a hunger artist's conscious choice to sequester himself in a cage. And this physical separation of artist and spectator mirrors the spiritual separation of individual, artistic ego and public will. And this gap in mindset leads to a critical gap in understanding. And we'll see the father, the hunger artist goes in pursuit of perfection as he does in a circus. Further away he moves from the understanding of people for whom he performs. He gets alienated, and the artist will always be separated from society because the qualities that distinguish him as an artist and worth preserving, the ones that ensure he will never be understood. And another theme is harmful effects of pride as well. And we'll see in the short story, the hunger artist fears pride in his art enables him to improve his fasting, and it ultimately stops him from reaching his goal because it hurt his public appeal and connection to other. And he looks on his emaciated frame and protruding ribcage with vanity, deeming them badges of honor, and his pitiful, grotesque body repulses the women who initially want to carry him from his cage at the end of his fast. And we'll see which is the manifestation of his pride, and this is the thing that ensure he will never be loved and admired by public. Pride turns the hunger artist away from others and into himself, and he reinforces isolation by imprisoning himself in a cage and meditating intensely. In the end, pride guarantees the hunger artist not fame and transcendence but obscurity. And the symbols in the short story. In this short story, the main symbols are the artists, the hunger artists were the crowds of onlookers. What they symbolize, we'll see it establish the themes of spirituality versus decadence as well, individualism versus conformity. So these things have been you can say compare in the short story. And we'll see some important symbols. The first one is the cage, which established the theme of time as well. The hunger artist was in vague but no more, which is to say that spirituality is a thing of past. And cage also symbolizes his alienation or isolation from the audience. Food, what food symbolized, it established the theme of materialism, uh, materialistic possession, and worldly needs of people and desire. And the circus undercuts the theme of individuality, spirituality, and the hunger artist. He is a hunger artist, sideshow professional who signs a contact. And the circus also symbolizes entertainment as well. And the animal is the panther used in the short story as a parody and foil of hunger artist. The animal is driven by excessive appetite and he is an exhibit in a zoo. And irony in the short story, we'll see it is ironical that the butchers are the ones who to watch the hunger artist to make sure he is not sneaking a meal. And second one is children are more fascinated by hunger artists than the adults. Shouldn't the adults worry more about the soul? And third one is the hunger artist replaced by animal, a panther who eats and like being fed and like being in a cage and doesn't miss his freedom. His dying words are these are the dying words of the hunger artist: because I have to fast, I can't help it. I couldn't find the food I like. If I had found it, believe me, I should have made no fuss and stuffed myself like you or anyone else. Did he fast out of habit or the distaste of for food? So this you have to analyze, and both seem practical or biological and suggest a lack of spirituality and true asceticism. And is modern man going through the motions of spirituality out of some mindless habit or lack of meaningful alternative? So these are important questions that we have to analyze in the short story. And this is both ironical and absurd. So absurdity of life has been discussed in the short story as well. So this is a short analysis of the story. Hope you understand. The notes are in the description. Thank you for watching.